Hi, I'm John Paul Raj, and I'm on a mission to make the learning of math fun. So, if you're new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. On this video, we're going to talk about how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. Let's start. In earlier videos, we've seen how to factor quadratic expressions. I'm going to link those videos in the description box below. If you've not seen any of those videos, you must go and take a look at them. On this video, we're going to go ahead and see how to use those factors and solve the quadratic equation. Okay, equation, not expression. This is number 13. We'll pick number 13. 6x squared minus 13x plus 6 is equal to 0. I'm going to put that line out here just to show that the working is on the right hand side. And as we did in the factoring video, multiply a and c. A is 6 and b is a negative 13. Negative 13, sorry, I should have written a negative sign there. Negative 13 and 6, c is 6. What's happening to me today? C is 6. All right. So what we're going to do is that first we're going to consider the factors of AC, all right? A and C. The product AC is 36. So the factors we are going to see is, we wanted the negative sign, right? So we're going to choose negative 9 times negative 4. And the reason we choose this particular combination of negative 9 and negative 4 is because only that combination, negative 9 and negative 4, will add to negative 13. Okay, negative 9, negative 4, with those signs will add to negative 13. So we want a product to be positive. So negative 9 times a negative 4 gives you a positive 36. If you've not seen my video on the product, that's a fun video. Okay, it's not, I mean, it won't be exam oriented, but if you'd like to know why the product of any two negative numbers is positive, go check out that video. I'm going to link that video in the description box below. But anyway, coming back to this, only one combination will work. Okay, when you look at the factors of AC, only one will work. So it's only negative 9 and negative 4. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to write this negative 13 as a negative 9 minus negative 4. Okay, that's what's called splitting of the middle term. Okay, so 6x squared, that comes down as it is, and this negative 13, we're going to write it as negative 9x minus 4x plus 6 is equal to 0. So these two terms are basically this one term written as, the sum of negative 9 and negative 4x. Okay, negative 9x and negative 4x giving you negative 13x. That's called the splitting of the middle term. Now we factor two terms at a time. Okay, we group these two terms and group these two terms. So we factor two terms at a time. So using the highest common factor of 6x and 6x squared and 9x, we should get this is 3x and this is 2x minus 3. And then we write a negative 2 and that will be 2x minus 3. And that's the beautiful part of this method of factoring, that any factor that you get here, you should get the same factor here with the same sign. Okay, that's a clue. So if you're getting something else, check your working. Moving on, we have the factors as 2x minus 3 times 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. Up until here is factoring, and all the videos on factoring we've just done up to here. Now we proceed on, okay, because now we have an equation with this equal to 0. So now what we say is that 2x minus 3 is equal to 0, or 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, after we've said that, we solve each of them. Each of them is now like a linear equation, so that's easier to solve. We get 2x is equal to 3, or 3x equals 2, which further gives you that x is equal to 3 over 2, or x is equal to 2 by 3. So that should be your answer. Okay, the solution to this quadratic equation 6x squared minus 13x plus 6 is equal to 0 is actually x is equal to 3 by 2, or x is equal to 2 over 3. Two values for the x. What do these x's mean? We'll answer that, but let's take one more example. Okay, so another example we'll take is, let's just take this one. Okay, number at random, I'm just picking up something at random. Okay, so let's take number 17. Okay, 13, for some people 13 is an unlucky number. For some people number 17 is an unlucky number. So I'm just picking up some numbers like that. 12y squared minus 16y plus a 5. I'm going to write that question here. Number 17. Can you guys see? Let me just first write it, then I'll scroll that side. 12y squared. I have a 12y squared minus 16y plus a 5 is equal to 0. This is a quadratic in y. And again, what we're going to do is that we're going to do the rough work on the right hand side. The first thing I always like to do is identify my A, B, and C. A is a 12, B is a negative 16, and C is a 5. And then what we do, we first find the product AC. Okay, AC is 12 times 5, which is 60. And then we look for the factors of 60, the factors of 60 who add up to negative 16. Okay, so again, we need two negative numbers because only two negative numbers will have a product that's positive and whose sum will still be a negative number. So what are the factors of 60 that will add up to 16? All right, so that should be negative 10 and a negative 6, because negative 10 and a negative 6, only that combination will give us a negative 16. Okay, so what's the next thing to do? We come back to a question and we express this as negative 10 minus 6. Okay, I hope you can see this. That's called splitting of the middle term, as I've said that before. So I'm going to write 12y squared minus 10y minus 6 plus 5, 6y, sorry, is equal to 0. Okay, now as you can see that we might need to shuffle or interchange this so that you can find the highest common factor of 12 and 6 easily and 10 and 5 easily. Okay, so that would mean this is 12y squared minus 6y minus 10y plus 5 is equal to 0. So all I've done is that I have, this was negative 10y minus 6y. We just borrowed it from here as it was. But because I wanted a common factor between 5 and 10, I just interchanged those values, and that's all right. Okay, now let's factor two terms at a time. The first two terms here and these two terms together. Okay, two at a time. The highest common factor of 12y squared and negative 6y should be 6y. And then I'll have 2y minus 1. And here I'll have negative 5 and 2y minus 1. Okay, it should come as the same sign. Okay, just watch out for that. So it's negative 5 times a negative 1 will give me a positive 5. Okay, so that same factor that you get here will come along here with the same sign. Now we find the factors. We get 6y minus 5 and 2y minus 1 is equal to 0. Now this is an equation. If it were only a quadratic expression and not a quadratic equation, remember there's an equal to 0 here, we should just stop here. Okay, but because it's an equation, we have to go ahead and find the value of the variable. In this case, it's y. So we go ahead and say, okay, that means 6y minus 5 is equal to 0, or 2y minus 1 is equal to 0. Now, although we are using the word or, actually there are those two roots. I'll come to that, okay? Why we're using or in a minute. Let's just solve this thing first. So this will give us 6y is equal to 5, or 2y is equal to 1. And which on further solving, you'll get y is equal to 5 over 6, or y is equal to 1 over 2. So those are the two roots, as we call it sometimes, roots or solutions. Let's do a quick recap of this method. So the equation was 12y squared minus 16y plus a 5 is equal to 0. We identify a, b, and c separately. Okay, and then we first find a times c. The product AC will have many combinations as its factors, but we choose only the one with the correct sign, okay, because negative 10 times a negative 6 will give me the positive 60, and that will add to negative 16. So that's the kind of combination we got to choose. And then we split the middle term, as we say. Okay, so negative 16 is expressed as negative 10 and a minus 6. In this case, we rearrange those terms. We shuffle those terms, okay? In the early case that we saw, we did not need to do that. And that is only because when we factor two terms at a time, in the next step, we could find the common factor for 5 and 10. Otherwise, we'd be stuck with this 5 and 6, okay? So then we take the highest common factor of the first two terms. That became 6y. And then we put the uncommon terms, 2y minus 1. Minus 5, again doing the same thing here. The highest common factor of these two terms is negative 5. And we noticed that this term in the bracket will be the same thing as the term in this bracket, okay? If you're getting a different term with a different sign, then check your work, you might have gone wrong. And the final step to factor is just grouping those two factors. But because there's an equal to 0, the solution is not yet over, okay? We need to find the solution. So then we equate each of those terms in the bracket, each of those factors equal to 0. We use this word or because of the multiplication law of zeros, or the zero law of multiplication, which actually says that when a product of two terms is 0, when you have a times b equal to 0, then one of them must be 0. One of them must be 0. Only then will the product be 0. So in a sense, if these are two terms, okay, watch this. If this is one term, the bracket, one bracket is one term, and this is another bracket being another term. If the product is 0, then one of them must be 0. That's why we use the word or. So technically, we do get both of them as zeros. What would be their values? That means 6y minus 5 equal to 0. would happen only when 6y is equal to 5 or the value of y being equal to 5 by 6. And in pretty much the same way, the other term, the other bracket, the other factor would be equal to 0 only when y is equal to half. So that is how you would solve a quadratic equation using this method called factoring. Now, before we close, I also want to show what do these solutions actually mean? What do these x actually depict on the graph, okay? We've seen in the earlier video, on an earlier video, we've seen that the graph of the quadratic actually represents a parabola, okay? So what we're going to do is that I'm going to identify x values on the x-axis. 3 by 2 is 1.5. So if that's 1 and if that's 2, can you see this? Okay. And let's say that's approximately, this is just approximately, that's going to be 3 by 2, that's 1.5. And 2 by 3 is something like 0.6. So if that is going to be 0.5, somewhere there should be 0.6. Okay, so I'm going to call that 3 by 2. And this is 2 over 3, 2/3. Now, after identifying these values, x equals 3 by 2 and 2 by 3 on the x-axis, we take a look at what the c value is, okay? We've seen in an earlier video, I think it was part 2 of quadratic equations, where c, the constant term, will give us the y-intercept of the quadratic. So somewhere on the y-axis, if that were 6, and the scale is not equal, as you can see, this is going, that's 1 and that's 2, that's 6, that means this should be 3. Okay, and that's my y-axis and this is my x-axis. Okay, so that 6 should be the y-intercept, which means then my parabola. And we can also see that the leading coefficient a is positive. That means you're going to get that u-shaped parabola, okay, concave up as we call it. And so that parabola will go through that y-intercept, cut the x-axis as 2/3 and cut again at 3 by 2. It's not exactly going through that, but I hope you get the idea, okay? This is the vertex, okay? The vertex. And in some other video, we'll talk about how to estimate, without a calculator, without a graphing device, how to estimate what the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate of the vertex is going to be. On this video, because we were just talking about the solutions of a quadratic equation, I thought I'll let you know that the solutions are the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts of that parabola where they cut the x-axis. In some textbooks, you'll come across the word roots, okay? Solutions, roots. In some schools and some books, they'll use the word zeros. They all mean the same thing. So these words, solutions, x-intercepts, roots, zeros, they all mean the same thing. They are the points where the quadratic, the parabola, cut the x-axis. I'm going to see you all in the next video.